Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Pro Bodybuilder. Today's guest is Guy Cisternino. Guy, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
For sure. So, Guy, I just want to jump right into a couple questions I like to ask all my guests. The first question is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Favorite bodybuilders of all time. I would have to say Kevin Levrone and Branch Warren.
All right, cool. Why those two guys specifically?
Kevin Levrone, I loved his training style. And obviously Branch as well. But Kevin's physique, I really, really loved. I thought he had one of the best shapes and structures back when I was following bodybuilding when he was competing. And Branch, I just could relate to as far as like his background, his attitude, his style of training. Like that's kind of what I wanted to like emulate as a pro coming up. Is I wanted to kind of be like a Branch in a way. I liked his attitude, his outlook on things. Like that was just my type of dude.
Cool. Second question here, just to kind of kick off the podcast conversation. At what age did you start lifting weights, and then why?
I started working out specifically for football. And I started I started training in my parents' garage at a really early age with the sand weights that were covered in plastic. But like training in an actual gym, I started training, I think when I was a freshman in high school. So right around like 14, 15 years old.
Awesome, man. All right. So I just kind of want to transition into kind of like your backstory. I know you've been on a lot of podcasts. I know through social media and stuff, you've shared a lot, but just for the listeners on my end, just touch on kind of like what your childhood was like. I know football is a big part of your childhood. I'm assuming other sports were too, but just touch on your childhood. What was that kind of like? And then we'll kind of transition up to high school and then post high school.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds. My cleaners.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good.
Oh, yeah, Gilson. You want to start the question over?
Yeah, we'll just start where just touch on your childhood and kind of what were those years like.
Yeah, I mean, when I was really young, I got bullied when I was young. I got bullied when I was in kindergarten. I got bullied pretty much till I was just about a freshman in high school. And I went to a Catholic high school my freshman year. And then I literally didn't know anybody because I didn't go to my public school. So I was at a school that I didn't know anybody because I got recruited there to play football. And that ended up being the worst decision I've ever made because that high school was absolutely horrible because the fact that I didn't know anybody and I kind of was segregated because I didn't have any friends when I started there. That was just a worse experience than actually just being bullied by people because now you're being bullied by people you don't even know. Then I went back to my public school the following year. And then obviously I played football since I was in third grade all through high school, through college. And when I got to high school, my public high school, and I started playing ball and I became one of the starters, then obviously the respect and the bullying and all that shit kind of changes. So, I guess once I earned a little respect within the football organization in my high school, the kids started to respect me. So once I went to my public school, it was like a 180, so that kind of triggered a little bit of my attitude within the gym and how I train and kind of why I train the way I train, because I use a lot of my aggression, my anger in the gym. And in order for me to be able to even play football, I was one of the smallest guys all the time when I started playing ball. Even in third grade, I was the smallest kid on the team. I was the smallest kid on the team almost through college. So the only way I knew to combat that was work out. So it was either work out harder than everybody else, so I was harder to take down and tackle on the field, or I could be lazy and just get my ass kicked. So I literally worked out every day.
Right.
And then I ended up falling in love with working out over football. So
now before we kind of transition into the working out and the bodybuilding, what was kind of like your mindset? Let's keep it kind of like in high school and stuff. What were you thinking about becoming or doing post high school, or what was that kind of that thing or a career that you wanted to pursue when you were younger?
I mean, everybody wanted to be a professional at something. So I wanted to be a professional football player. But when I got out of high school and got into college, and obviously I knew that I wasn't going to be a professional football player because of my size. Because reality obviously clicks in a lot sooner in life with things like that. But I ended up really falling in love with teaching. So my degree is actually in history because I went to school to be a history teacher. So I really fell in love with history when I was in college. And well, there was one teacher in high school that I really liked, Mr. Cosgrove. He was awesome. And he made history, like just learning history, a lot of fun for me. And then when I went on to college and I was a little older and a little more mature, and I paid attention more and I wasn't dicking around, because now I'm in college and you're starting to grow up a little bit. You start paying attention to a little more in depth what the teacher's talking about and studying a little more. And actually, I started to enjoy learning about history. So that was after what I planned on doing, was being a high school teacher of history and being a football coach. But that obviously didn't pan out.
Right. What was it, Guy? Because like this is kind of, in terms of my podcast, why I kind of love asking people like yourself, professional athletes, professional bodybuilders specifically, that's why I like to touch on the backstory, right? Because it kind of brings out maybe some parts that we don't know about that athlete or that individual. So what was it about, I think you said Mr. Cosgrove, what was it about him that just kind of sparked that interest for you in history? Was it his teaching style?
Yeah.
What was it specifically?
It was his teaching style. He was very animated when he talked, and the way he expressed himself and the way he explained things, he captured you almost like an audience. And he made learning history really fun, instead of just like sitting behind a desk and just being very monotone for 60 minutes and talking about, timelines and dates things happen. Like he actually got into, like he enjoyed it so much that he made us enjoy it. So it's kind of one of those things, if you're passionate about what you do, it's not really work.
Right. All right. So touch on, so you went to college to be a history teacher. Let's talk about then where the working out, the weight training really took off. And then let's talk about why you didn't become a history teacher.
So why it didn't take off? Well, when I was in college, there was something called a praxis test, which you have to take in order to be a teacher. So my sister, the law changed. My sister graduated college in 1999 without taking the praxis test. But in 2000, they changed the law where, in order to graduate college with a degree in education, you had to have had the praxis test taken and passed. None of my counselors told me that. So I went through all my prereqs. I did all my theory of education, all my papers, everything I had to do. And then I get to do, it's the last semester, it's your professional semester, where you're like, your classes are picked for you. It's literally your professional semester and then student teaching, and you have your degree. Well, I go into my interview and I checked all the boxes, my GPA, my this, my that, everything was done. And they were like, what's your praxis score? I was like, my what? And they're like, your praxis score. I go, I don't know what you're talking about. So then they told me, and then that test wasn't something back then that you could just readily pull up online and just do. You had to actually go to a place, sit down in a classroom and take the test. And they only had certain dates available. It wasn't like you could just take it every week. It was like one was this month and one was this month. And I ended up having to drop the education part of my degree, or I could have taken a year off of school or a semester off and then come back and pick up, because when it started, like the way the semesters work, I was going to miss a semester anyway, because the way the professional semester was set up, I wasn't going to be able to take it. So my parents were like, you're not taking a semester off of college. So I ended up having to drop the education part of my degree, just be a history teacher, and then go alternate route. But I was a history teacher. So I have my BAs in history. And then I ended up right out of college, before I even took the praxis test, I ended up getting hired working for HSBC, which is one of the biggest banks in the world, doing mortgages. So I was making double what a teacher was making. So I never really looked back after that, because I was making so much money in the mortgage industry. And then I ended up getting laid off because of the crash in 2008, just killed everybody. Our whole division got completely shut down. So I got laid off. I was unemployed. And then I got hired as a sales rep for BSN 18 months later. And then one of my first pro show, then they took my sales role, made me into an athlete, and that's it.
Right. And just, we do have something in common. I'm a certified teacher. I took the praxis, so I know a little bit of what you're talking about with all that. So in terms of the bodybuilding stuff, we touched on a little bit of the upbringing in high school, college. That's cool. But obviously you're an IFBB Pro bodybuilder. That's kind of what myself and my audience wants to kind of hear about. But you know, after you graduated high school, guys, I know you were lifting weights because of football, but did you continue to train during college and then really get immersed in bodybuilding during college, or when did that come to be?
So when I was in 8th grade, I started getting into bodybuilding because I started getting into the magazines and like reading about it and paying attention to the Olympias and shit. And I started training like a bodybuilder when I was in college. When I started training, I was training. It's hard. I think I was training a little bit like a bodybuilder and a power lifter, like for football when in high school. But then when I got to college, I really took on like a bodybuilding style of training. And I was the only guy that was in the weight room after my buddies in college still talk about it today. Like we would have, I would go to class from 8 a.m. until what was it, like 2 o'clock. And then we'd have football practice from like 3 to 5:30. And then at 5:30, we'd come in and we'd be done. I would literally go into the locker room, take my pads off, rinse off, throw shorts on, a shirt, eat one of those like Myoplex or Metrex bars from back in the day, and then go fucking work out. And I'd be the only guy in the weight room. But I loved working out so much that like I didn't look at that as like a chore. That was fun for, back then. That's what the shit that people don't see. People don't see back when we didn't have video cameras on our phones and we didn't have the internet and all this shit that Instagram and social media. Like there was nobody paying attention to me back then. That was when the real work like got put in. Like everything that everybody sees now is a byproduct of what they didn't see from 10 years ago.
For sure. So then what was kind of like, obviously reading the magazines and stuff, but did you have some sort of mentor, like at the gym you were training at, or through college, or somebody that kind of like helped you with the bodybuilding stuff? Or was it kind of just through the magazines and learning it on your own?
It was honestly through the magazines and by myself. And then I ran in the other guy that was in the state that everybody bragged about was PJ Braun, because he was literally like in the same town as me. And everybody's like, oh, you guys should meet, because he was like a very well-known name within the town. So me and him ended up meeting and becoming like best friends. So, I trained with him for years, and now I'm sponsored by his company, Blackstone Labs. But so we have like 21 years of friendship, which is hilarious because we've never lost contact with each other. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty much just reading and whatever knowledge I picked up through people that were more knowledgeable than me.
Cool. Now, in terms of, I want you just to share a little bit about your amateur career in the NPC, and then when you earned your IFBB Pro card. And I mean, you talked about the BSN stuff, but I kind of want you just to touch on that competition a little bit as an amateur, and then like that experience of actually winning, earning, receiving your IFBB Pro card, because that's like a huge accomplishment for anybody that's in bodybuilding.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't know what being a professional bodybuilder was when I first started bodybuilding. Like I had no idea. IFBB, NABA, NBC, like all these different organizations. Like I didn't have a fucking clue. So when the first show I ever did was a NABA show, because I literally had no idea what was going on. But as an amateur, like it was crazy. My amateur career happened very fast. I had one of the fastest amateur careers in bodybuilding history with a few others. Like I was only an amateur for 5 years and I only did 8 shows. Like back then that was unheard of. So for me, my amateur career happened very fast, even though I almost turned pro in 2007 when Jose Raymond beat me. I took second. I was actually, I say it all the time, I was actually glad that I didn't win, because I think you have to learn how to be a great champion in order to be, or how to be a great loser in order to be a good champion. And back in 2007, I wasn't ready to be a pro yet. I had a lot more maturing to do. And I needed to take that second place and have that whole year to know that I was the guy now in chronological order. I was the guy who's now in first place if Jose's now gone. So everybody's gunning for me. So I trained like I was the champ and that people had to take me out. And I won in 2008. But I just tell everybody, enjoy the ride, because you could blink and it could be over. Right. So it talks about wanting to be a pro and they haven't even stepped on stage yet. And I go, you guys have no idea.
Right. What was the experience like then you know, kind of going into that year that you turned pro, when kind of you were the number one guy, the target was on your back. What was that kind of like for you? Was that a pretty exciting time, or was there a lot of pressure, and was it kind of a tough year going into that year when you knew you were kind of next in line to get your pro card?
It was definitely a little more stressful than I thought, because I was still an amateur. And that's when kind of like the website started getting big, like Muscular Development and all those other sites, and the forums were big. So then like, that's when like I got like a first taste of like people being like scumbags, you know, like hating on you. And I'm like, I'm 20 whatever years old. I was like, and people are hate me because they don't like how I look. Like, I don't understand. So there was definitely a little pressure from seeing stuff like that. And then people actually talking about me and turning me into somebody when I was a nobody, you know? So there was definitely pressure there. And my training, I always trained like a maniac. So whether I was, you know, training for a show or training in my off season, my attitude in the gym was always the same. It's still the same now, even though I'm retired.
So what with the BSN you mentioned earlier, did that happen before you turned pro, or was that during your amateur career?
I was already a pro when I was with BSN. They hired me as a sales outside sales rep in 2011. And then that same year I did a show. It was my third pro show ever, and I won. And then I got home from the show, and then the head of marketing called me and offered me an athlete role within the company. So my sales role became an athlete role very fast, because it was very hard to do both. So it kind of just turned into being an athlete. And then from there on in, it just turned into, you know, once I left BSN, I got another sponsor, picked up another sponsor, you know, and that's, you know, my life now is representing my sponsors in the best way I can.
For sure. And then with like the BSN opportunity at that moment, was that kind of the moment when you were like, hey, you know what, this has a great chance to be my career and how I make a living for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I never thought I would be in a position that I'm in. So to say that I thought that I could turn this into a career, even when I turned pro, I'd be lying to you when I said yeah. Because I learned very quickly how much money there was not in the sport. Because that's kind of right around when I turned pro, 2011, 12, when like social media and all that stuff kind of came to fruition. That kind of killed a lot of the big mainstream media, magazines, and big contracts. So a lot of that shit kind of was fizzling out as I was coming up. I've been lucky enough to be, you know, one of the top tier as far as like who makes how much money in the industry. But as far as thinking I could make it a career, I didn't really think I could make it a career until I got offered a paid sponsorship, because that was the first time I made a dime from doing anything. And I was, you know, it was $1,000 a month, but I was like $1,000 a month for bodybuilding. I was like, this is like, I felt like I was a millionaire.
Right,
you know,
right.
I was 20. What was it? 20. I turned pro at 26. So 26. I was 29, thinking that like I'm getting $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year from BSN. I was like, you're the fucking man. And now I look back and I was like, you stupid idiot.
Right. But it's still though, like I've had quite a few IFBB pros on the podcast and stuff, and it's always cool to kind of hear like that moment when like it was $500 or they had got some free supplements, but you know, just it's like, whoa, like I'm actually getting something for doing something that I love and I'm passionate about, right? Instead of you know, pushing carts at Walmart, or, you know, doing whatever job that you got to do to pay the bills. Now, something that I had written down, I wanted to touch on, and we kind of just naturally came to the point, but social media, right? You're a little bit older than myself, but I was around with the magazines and then that transition. Yeah. So talk about maybe to the younger guys, there is money in fitness, there is money in bodybuilding, but you've got to put in the work to earn that money, right? It's not just about how great of a bodybuilder you are anymore. A lot of it is social media. So touch on how you've been able to use social media to your advantage and to continue to earn an income through bodybuilding, through social media.
Well, there's a difference in wanting to be like a fitness influencer, which is hilarious, or if you want to be a pro. It's very simple. If you want to be a pro bodybuilder and make money in this sport, then just fucking win and do good. Like, it's that simple. You don't need to fucking be in the gym filming all this crazy shit with no following, because as soon as you turn pro, like, look at every guy that's turned pro or won a pro show or won a show, like the Arnold or the Olympia. Like, I remember when Sean Roden turned pro, he went from like 600 followers to 1 million, that like over 1 million the next day. Like, it's that easy. So yeah, it is very easy to build a name just in bodybuilding. But the reason why people don't want to do it is because putting in fucking the real work in the gym is a lot harder than setting up a damn camera and just taking content photos or videos all fucking day long. So I just chose to train my ass off. And I was like, when I get to the top, that's when I'll start worrying about. I was one of my fucking parents had Facebook before I did. That's how lame I was. I thought social media was ridiculous. So I was one of the last people. I think I got Instagram in like 2012. I don't know when that started, but that's the same year I got Facebook. So I tell people, if there'd probably be a lot more good, great bodybuilders in the world if people actually worked out through the whole entire workout 100% rather than only working out 100% when they're filming a fucking video for Instagram. And that's the fact. I see it. I was in the gym the other night and there was a couple there and I'm just like, are you guys working out? Do you care more about working out or the camera? Like, there was 2 tripods, a camera, a phone camera. And I'm like, I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Like, and I get people go, well, how do you expect to gain a following, if you're not filming? And I'm like, I film now or get filmed by camera crews or camera guys or videographers because I'm a pro, because I have sponsors, because my sponsors ask for stuff and my sponsors pay for the camera people or pay for this. I do it because it's my job. I don't do it because it's a hobby. But if you want to make it a job, then just be a good fucking bodybuilder or bikini girl or figure girl or whatever it is. Fucking win it that. And you'll be successful and you'll get a following from just being fucking you and being great. But people just try to, I don't think a lot of people want to be bodybuilders or I think they just want to be in the industry as an influencer and not really go through the process that we go through, which is fine. But that's the difference between being a pro and being an influencer. An influencer, you have no idea what it fucking takes to get to where we got to. It's very different. So you can't even put an influencer and a pro in the same category in my eyes.
Right. 100%. No, and that's why I wanted you to touch on it, because there's a difference between actually doing something and gaining a following and then trying to gain a following by just, like you said, shooting content or whatever. Now, I want you to touch on, if you don't mind, Guy, just, the process of being a bodybuilder and then pursuing or having a coach. I know that you've had a few coaches throughout the year, but I know Chris Cisternino has been a huge influence in your life. I had Jose Raymond on. I asked Jose about Chris because I know they're very well connected, and Chris has coached Jose and things like that. But just talk about maybe the process. If somebody's younger, they're listening to this, they're thinking about getting into bodybuilding. Talk about just the coaching aspect of things, if you really need one, if you don't. And then I do want you then to touch on your relationship with Chris and how much of an impact he's had on your life, not only as a bodybuilder, but as a man as well.
If you're getting into the industry, you absolutely need a coach because it's very fucking difficult to figure all this stuff out. Like, I didn't know anything about carb depleting, sodium depleting, water, like high days, low days. Like, I would have no clue. You can do all the research you want. Like, you definitely need somebody to help, at least, even if it's not do everything for, like, write it out all for you, at least to guide you. So I tell people, look at the resume and look at who they are. Like, do they work with athletes that do well? Do their athletes look good enough through your eyes that you're looking at these pictures or these people going, they actually look really good? Do they have any accolades? Do they have a degree? Do they have any certificates? It's just that all comes into play. I get so many people that are like, oh, you probably know my coach. And I'm like, yeah, who's that? And they'll shout out name. I'll go, I have no fucking clue who that is. Like, oh, well, he works with so-and-so. I'm like, I don't know who that is either. And they're like, oh, well, so-and-so recommended him. I'm like, I don't know who that is either. So it like comes to a point where like these self-proclaimed fucking coaches just come out of nowhere. And when people, I have a lot of clients and I don't even promote coaching. And people go, well, if you have a coach, why do you coach? I go, because I've worked with the best fucking coaches in the entire world in my industry. So I gained all my knowledge working with the best of the best. So it was almost like having written notes given to me by the best trainers or nutritionists in the entire bodybuilding world. And I've been in the industry since 2003 and now 2021. That's almost 20 years of knowledge from other people and trial and error on myself that I have. So it's like, if you need to know somebody's background and if they have accolades and who they're working with in order to, you can't just be like, oh, my buddy works out and he's bigger than me and he wants, and he's going to help me with a prep. Like that's ridiculous. And a lot of people don't want to spend the money. And that's another thing, you're not going to get good service for free unless you're like somebody's brother, so you're going to have to open your wallet up and pay somebody on a monthly basis if you want proper attention and proper guidance.
Touch on Chris Aceto and his impact on your career and your life overall.
Chris is one of the most humble, funny, caring individuals I've ever met and the best coach in the industry. He did my nutrition since 2013. He did my coach, my nutrition, and Charles Glass did a lot of my training. And then like 3.5 years ago, that's when John Meadows started doing my training. So Chris never really did my training. It was just, nutrition, but I spent so much time with Chris from 2013 until, I retired. He was just, he made bodybuilding fun, and he made me realize that you just got to take emotion out of it. Whether I won a show or whether I got second or fourth or fifth, we always came back to the hotel room and we're sitting in the hotel room and we acted like, whether I won, if I won, it wasn't a party. If I won, we sat on the couch and he was like, we got another one. And it was like, yep. And if I lost, he'd be like, it was a bullshit call. Or he'll be like, yeah, you were a little flat at prejudging. He was like, I should have maybe filled you up a little bit. And I'd be like, it is what it is. And like, he taught me that getting mad or pissed off doesn't do anything, and getting excited that you won sometimes also doesn't do anything. Sometimes the best thing to do is just keep your emotions at bay, because that's the best thing to do. Because, at the end of the day, win or lose, there are people around me that are like very, very close friends. So if I win, that means they didn't. And I don't want to be overly exaggeratory in their face. And if I lost and I'm upset, I don't want to be upset and have them view me as being like the asshole because he didn't win, because everybody wants to win. So it's how you act in those moments that really define your character in the sport. And I think that goes to show with a lot of individuals that lose. So
For sure. You just recently retired, and I want to touch on that here in a minute, but I want to talk about your career. 7-time winner, 7-time Olympian, correct?
Yeah.
So just touch on, obviously it was a very long, illustrious career. There's a lot in there, but just touch on maybe, some of the highs and a couple of the lows. Cause again, because of social media now and all that, we see all the highlights, we see the wins, we see all the smiles, but there's some hard times, there's some down times, there's low times for all of us. So touch about just within your bodybuilding career, maybe a couple of the highlights. What was maybe your biggest highlight within your competition career? And then what was maybe a low point or a couple of low points, if you don't mind touching on that?
One of the high points in my professional career, so I won't talk about anything in amateur, was winning the New York Pro back-to-back. And the second time that I won it wasn't easy because my brother got married the day before. So I was at the wedding giving a best man speech in fucking pro tan, running back to the hotel, ripping my tux off, having Chris look at me, throwing my tux back on, going back to the wedding. So that made that win like that much more just enjoyable. So those two victories were really my favorite. And 2000, I think it was 15 or 16, 15, that I took 6th at the Olympia. I thought I was going to be higher, but that was the highest I placed at the Olympia. So, that was the first time I got to do my routine on stage in front of the audience. So that was a real treat. So those were definitely some of my favorite highs. Lows, I would have to say 2017, when those burns started, that's when my career just started going down a rabbit hole. It was the burns, and then it was double shoulder surgery, and then it was stem cells in my shoulders, elbows, knees, and back. And then it was COVID, and then it was a blood clot in my leg. Then it was pneumonia. It was just like, the lows just kept coming. And I was like, all right, like enough's enough. Like I'm 39, like obviously my body just can't take it anymore. Like, right.
So what was that kind of the ultimate decision that was made for you in terms of retiring? Was just like your body was just saying, hey guy, like enough's enough, we're done? Or was it something else?
Yeah, it was my body, man. Like, I go to physical, people only see what I post. People don't see that, like, my knees are shot. My shoulders are probably going to need to get replaced maybe later on in life. They're that bad. But I'm still able to work out. But people don't see that I'm in like, I'm not going to say I'm in like excruciating pain every day, but I'm in pain every day. My back kills me from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. My shoulders are fucking they're destroyed. I've had two surgeries on this one on this one. I mean, I can't, my internal and external rotation is junk, but I go to physical therapy 4 times a week just to be able to be mobile to work out. So between the stretching and the physical therapy, and like, that's just to make it to the fucking gym. And then I train, and then so it's almost like I fix everything to destroy it. And then I got to get it fixed again the next day. It's just like, and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, man, like, no matter how much I can still shoulder press or bench press, like, this isn't what it used to be all through here, because I've been cut so many times from all my surgeries. So people look at me and they're like, well, you're still strong as shit. You can still bench press this. And I'm like, doesn't fucking matter, because if the muscles or the nerves aren't firing the right way, and my muscles aren't growing, and I'm losing that roundness and that fullness, what's the point? I'm getting beat by guys that never beat me or should beat me, and they're beating me because I don't look like I did, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I'm okay with that. I was that guy. That came up in the ranks, started beating fucking the dudes that were probably like, and probably ended a lot of people's career, so it happens. And I made peace with that a long time ago.
So I know in terms of your mentality and everything, you wouldn't change anything, but just looking back, and again, maybe speaking to some younger individuals that are in bodybuilding or getting into bodybuilding, is there something maybe in terms of your training or recovery or anything like that, not your mindset, not your mentality, anything within the recovery training? Is there anything that you would have changed or adjusted just to maybe not be so beat up at this point and going forward?
Yeah, I would have probably went to more of like a John Meadows style training, which was like John had me do push-pull legs. And that really changed my physique. And it also really changed how my body felt. I was hitting my body parts more often, which people are like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, yeah, well, I was hitting them more often, but the way my programs were set up in 2 sets here and 1 set there and 3, it was very strategic the way John wrote my plans up. And they were wrote up because they were wrote up for me and my body. And the way it was structured, I trained more, but in some ways less. And the way that was set up for me just overall made my body feel that much better. The workouts are a lot harder because when you're doing a push day, it's chest. I did it last night, chest, shoulders, triceps. It's not a short session because you're doing 3 body parts. So it's a pretty long session. And you're like, I only did 4 things for chest and 3 things for shoulders and 2 things for triceps, which most people go, oh, I did 30 sets for chest. I probably did, 40 sets combined between all 3. So it is a long session, but the way it is, like, I feel so much better rather than just going to the gym and doing chest for an hour and a half.
Right. Did the recovery, the deep tissue work and stretching and all that type of stuff, was that something also that you kind of adopted later on and that you would recommend people to adopt sooner or not?
I tell people don't start going to physical therapy or a masseuse or a chiropractor when you're hurt. Go for maintenance, because if you go for maintenance, you're better. There's a better chance that you won't have to go because you won't get hurt. So you just continue to go once or twice a week as a maintenance phase. Sometimes that's going to save you a lot of time, effort, and money.
For sure. And I think a great example of that is, I know somebody else that you look up to and you're very good friends with is Jay Cutler, right? I mean, I remember watching his DVDs back in the day, doing
the massage like every day.
What's that?
Get massaged and adjusted like every day.
Yeah, and look at him at this point in his life. It's a testament. So that's great words of wisdom. Mindset mentality. I know that you kind of have that mindset mentality you touched on earlier in terms of training when you walk in the gym. What is that mindset? What is that mentality when you walk in the gym? And then how does that carry over into your day-to-day life, business and career-wise?
I just have a switch, man. When I walk in the gym, I'm like, when I walk in the gym and I get my shit on and put my headphones on, I'm ready to, it's like, all right, time to work. Like, time to go to work.
Right.
That's why I train with my hoodie on and my headphones on. Cause I'm not there to fucking talk. I'm not there to be nice. I'm not there to hit on fucking girls. I'm not there to look at everybody. I'm not there to people watch. I'm there to fucking do what I need to do. What's on the sheet in front of me. And I'm there to do that and leave. And that's all I want to fucking do. I don't want to do anything but that. I want to attack the goal that I have in front of me, which is whatever amount of sets and reps I got to do. And I want to do it 110%. And I want to do it with zero fucking distractions, which is why people like, why do you still use a headphone cord? And why? Because I still use an iPod or an iPod Touch, and it's on airplane fucking mode. So nobody can text me. Nobody can call me. The Wi-Fi is turned off. I'd have no apps on it. And I use it only for fucking music, because I don't even want to hear my phone ring, go off, nothing when I'm training. And my phone has to be near me because, for social media purposes. If it was up to me, my phone would be in the damn bag. I just like zero distractions in the gym. I see people setting up their phones, setting up their tripod, setting up their camera, pulling their shorts up to show their legs, but it's insane. I'm like, just fucking work out.
Amen, man. All right. Something that I wanted to ask you about, and hopefully you don't mind talking about, which I'm sure you won't, but I listened to your retirement speech, and the first thing that you said, you thanked your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because faith is something that's important to me. And, to be honest with you on the podcast right now, that kind of caught me off guard that you brought that up. So, what does that look like for you just in your life? And why was that something that you brought up in your retirement speech, Guy?
Well, I mean, if anybody knows me, if you've ever seen me on stage, every time I walk off stage to do a routine, I always do the sign of the cross. It's just something I did it when I played football. If I scored a touchdown, I did it when I played baseball at the plate. I was just brought up as a Catholic, and since COVID, because I've traveled so much. Prior to COVID, I would go to church every Sunday by myself, because that's how I was brought up. I was brought up as a God-fearing person. I was brought up, that there's bigger things than just what's here right now. And I don't judge anybody for their beliefs or their views, but I say it all the time. If people live a life thinking that this is all there is, that's a pretty shitty fucking way of living. I'm not saying you have to live with my beliefs, but my beliefs make me living today a lot more at ease, thinking that there's something bigger than just being here right now doing this. So, I don't have it like there's no political agenda behind what I said on stage. I said what I said on stage because I thanked who I think in my heart of hearts are the truest of people that I needed to thank. And I don't think, the way I was brought up, if my parents were sitting right in front of me, I still would have thanked my Lord before my parents, because that's just how and my parents would expect that of me. So, it doesn't, I don't do it for any praise or anything else. I do it because that's who I am. And that's why the comments don't bother me. The haters don't bother me, because I am who I am. And I don't give a shit what anybody else says, because I know exactly the person that I am, and I'm true to who I am, and I know my morals and my values. And if people want to think differently, then I don't give a damn.
Right. And that's why I knew you wouldn't care about talking about that. Who's been or what's something just like, and we'll wrap this up here pretty shortly, but bodybuilding overall, what has it given you? What has it taught you? What are one or two things that, man, it's like, you know what, if I didn't do bodybuilding, I probably wouldn't have learned this or that.
Knock it off. My dog's getting smart. Honestly, bodybuilding taught me that things can start very fast and end very quick. Bodybuilding taught me that you can be at the top of your game and still not be happy. I sacrificed a lot of relationships. You have to learn. Bodybuilding taught me a lot more balance than anything else. People think working a 9 to 5 is hard. Try working 24/7, 365. Like, I don't just bodybuild. Like, I have my website, I have my clients, I have my sponsors. I'm on a plane every damn week. Like, I'm constantly having people stay at my house to watch my dogs. Like, my life is hectic. I don't have a lot of downtime, and the downtime that I do have usually isn't enough to make somebody else happy. So at 39 years old, you know, I'm by myself. So there's a lot of depressed loneliness, always being by yourself, that comes with the sport. If I would have done anything differently, I probably would have balanced things a little better with certain people in my life at the given time. But when you're young, you think that this time is going to last forever, and yeah, things are going to always be like this. And then when you get older, you realize, oh, you know, there's a lot more than just being a bodybuilder. So it taught me a lot about life. It taught me how to make money. It taught me how to be an entrepreneur. It taught me how to be a better bodybuilder. It showed me how to give back. It gave me more faith. It gave me some of the best friends I've ever had, and it made me dislike people that I never thought I disliked. But you know, it's I think you can say that about anything in life. I think anybody's job or anybody's lifestyle, you know, main thing that they do is always going to have some sort of major impact on them, especially when you do it for as long as I've done this.
For sure. What did you mean by, you know, bodybuilding taught you that when you're at the top, it's you know, maybe it's empty, or it doesn't mean as much as you thought? What did you kind of mean by that, Guy?
Because there are guys that are at the top of the game on stage, but they're broke. You know, you can be at the top of this industry and be broke. There are guys that are Mr. Olympias that are broke. For, you know, it's crazy. But you can be at the top of the industry and not make it, you know, and make money. I've seen guys make money and burn it so damn fast. I've seen guys at the top of the industry not capitalize on being at the top and not starting clothing brands or investing certain things or saving money. I've seen guys that just do well, but have such a dog shit personality that they have zero sponsors and make zero money, even though they win shows. But winning shows aren't going to pay your fucking bills. Not, you know, not the only one that really would be the Arnold or the Olympia. Those are only two shows you could win that you actually pay your bills with. Winning a pro show, you can't really do much with. So yeah, you could be at the top and still, you know, not be at the top.
Where did you get the nickname Quadro?
My buddy, actually, they used to call me the Scene, because they ever said wherever I went, there was always like some sort of like scene or like whether it was good or bad. There was always some sort of chaos around me, whether it was good or bad. So one day, my buddy Chris LeCompte was at my house, one of my best friends, and he just so happened to Google like what the Scene was in Italian, and there it was. And he was like, dude, he goes, this is like a two birds with one stone. He's like, it means the Scene in Italian. And he goes, you have ridiculous looking legs. He's like, you'd be dumb not to use this. So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then that was it. And people still to this day think this has, I don't even know how this would even make, like, people, because it says quad, but I'm like, I would never call myself like, but people still think it has to do with my legs, and it has nothing to do with my legs whatsoever.
Right. I love it, man. All right. What's next for Guy Cisternino then?
I'm still gonna be doing the same stuff that I do. I'm still training. I'm still gonna be coaching. I still have my sponsors. There's still a lot that I'm gonna still be doing that hasn't changed. That probably won't change for a very long time.
Awesome, man. One last thing, you know, is there anything that you kind of just want to put out there, anything that you want to share with Behind the Muscle podcast listeners before we close this out, Guy?
I just tell people, man, be you, be true to who you are. And especially when it comes to social media, don't, people can smell bullshit and see fake very easy. And people, ask me about growing their social media. And I go, listen, I didn't pay attention to anybody. I didn't look at how anybody did things. I didn't pay attention to hashtags or this or that. I posted what's me. And that's all I fucking did. I was just who I was, and people could decide if they liked it or not. I didn't change my persona for social media to gain access to monetary value. Like, that's just not me. So I just tell people, just be true to who you are.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule, Guy, just to share a little bit of your story and insight. It's greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, bro. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Cool. I'm just going to do a quick outro here, and then I'll end the conversation. All right.
You got it, bro.
Okay, cool. Behind the Muscle podcast listeners, thank you so much for your listening ears. They're always greatly appreciated. If you guys would do me a huge favor and take this episode of Behind the Muscle and share it on your social media platforms, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you guys want to find out more about the podcast, just head to YouTube, type in Behind the Muscle podcast, and you'll find all of the episode, the guests and things like that. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.